Sean, let's talk about one of the most important aspects that we see in the golf swing, kind of miss for some golfers, okay for some other golfers, and just really good players just nail this every time.
Yeah, it's the amount of, obviously everyone knows they need to rotate,
Right.
but most golfers don't understand that there needs to be some tilting that happens to the hips also, or the lower body, or the pelvis, however you want to look at it.
We see every golfer rotate. Some better than others, but we see rotation all the time. We don't see the tilting all the time in all golfers.
Yeah, and that's the detail that gets left out sometime, is that they just think they need to turn as much as they can, and that's a great thing because the more you turn, the better it is. But there's a key element of tilt in the hips as you go back, because you set up on a tilted angle that needs to be in there in order to do this correctly and have a decent golf swing.
I would even say for most golfers, the tilt is the important part.
Yeah, because most people leave it out.
Yep.
They don't even understand they need it.
That's exactly right. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video, is how the hips should be rotating and tilting throughout the backswing. So essentially, Sean, we've got about a quarter of a second on the downswing. Right? And we see all the time golfers will come in and under the impression that if I can max out my backswing rotation, I'm going to be better on the downswing. The problem is that quarter of a second's kind of looming over their head, and they don't have enough time to go 70 degrees in the backswing, which we see, and be open at impact.
Yeah, there's just not enough time to do it.
Usually you're going to see the best players in the world go 40 in the back, be 40 open. That's 80 degrees with the best in the world.
Exactly right. There's just not enough time to cover that amount of ground in a quarter of a second.
In a quarter of a second. So when they get open to cover that kind of ground, or to get that much in the backswing, they throw tilt out the window.
Yeah, so the main issue we're going to cover here is that in the backswing, most golfers are going to rotate.
Yes, everybody's going to rotate.
And some more than others, but I think the thing that people leave out is that the hips have to actually have some tilt to them as they go back. I'm set up on an angle where my pelvis is tilted forward. If I turn it and maintain kind of the plane of the hips in this manner, there has to be some tilt. This right hip's going to get higher and this left hip's going to get a little bit lower. And that in itself will govern how much you need to turn back. So instead of just turning as much as you can,
which will flatten all that out.
Today we're going to discuss kind of adding in some tilt here and what you should be doing in your swing instead of what's kind of popular right now, which is just to almost stand up
and just
turn
spin
as much as you can, which you just don't see the best players in the world doing.
No, because that timing thing is still, it's always looming in the golf swing.
And you've got some ground forces there that are compromised when the hips get level, because you can't do some things with the ground.
The whole 9 yards.
That we'll talk about in some other videos. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, as you go back, a lot of golfers just don't understand that this end of this club here needs to go down some as this goes up, and the knees need to change. So instead of just thinking rotate in the backswing, that's not quite enough detail. We need to know that they tilt some as well to put us in the correct position to start down.
Right, so let's kind of discuss what we see golfers do. We see that over rotation every day, right, in an effort to get more speed on the downswing.
Yeah.
And it winds up creating less speed because you're adding more loft to the club, you're flipping it more because you ran out of time. The answer to over rotating isn't to restrict the hips.
Yeah, we see that too.
Yes.
They've been told, I need to hold back the lower and turn them upper as much as you can.
Yeah, like to create that coil or X factor or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and when they do that, they don't turn enough, so the hands don't get quite deep enough.
And then you get over the top and you get, none of those work. It's a dangerous combination to do either one.
Right.
What you touched on was so important, is you want to have the tilts in place, so that kind of keeps your rotation. You want to be able to rotate as much as you can inside the correct tilts.
Yeah, the hips have their own, talk about club plane a lot. The hips or pelvis has its own plane. So if you want the hips to stay on a certain plane or the correct plane, there has to be some tilting of it as you go back. You don't just flatten this whole thing out.
I can rotate my hips about 90 degrees in the backswing outside of the correct tilt window.
Yeah, it's just this.
And I can get about 20 degrees closed at impact, which does me no good.
Yeah, I think I would probably still be closed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like Mike said, and I'm an inflexible person, and the fact that I can stand here and turn my hips 90 degrees is just not, A, it's not correct, and B, it doesn't do any good for me on the downswing.
It does you harm on the downswing.
Yeah, you might feel like, oh, I'm really wound up, but it's going to actually hurt your swing more than it's going to help when you do that.
Because we want to create this downward, like when those hips tilt, right? and you get this left knee doubling in flex, this right knee straightening some, that creates just tremendous leverage, this downhill move into the downswing that's not there when the tilt's not there.
Yeah, and you get a lot of ground force from that
Yes.
when you do it correctly.
You get a lot of easy speed out of that.
You do. It's absolutely right what Mike's saying. The hips are going to change, the right hip's going to get higher. That gives me this downhill feeling without having to push, right? Because when you push, you start to tilt back a little early. So right hip high, my downhill feeling, then I can kind of explode and push up to my left
That's right.
side.
We want that fall downhill. We don't want to push ourselves uphill, which we see all the time, right? We see turn level and then push uphill. Pushing uphill has never made anybody go faster. It's that downhill fall that gains you speed.
Yeah, you want to be headed downhill in the
That's
first part
exactly
of the
right.
downswing.
So we're going to show you some really cool technology that we use when we come back and do the drills and kind of really give you a way to make sure you're doing this at home and then kind of show you the numbers associated with that and what that all creates. So we've got Sean suited up and we've got a couple things going on here. We've got a noodle on a mic stand, and we'll show you what that's going to do in a second. We've got an alignment stick going through your belt.
Yep.
And then underneath, or right over top of that alignment stick, he's got the K-Vest weight sensor. Waist sensor.
Yeah, it's
Weight
it's
sensor.
measuring the pelvis. It's measuring the rotation,
Right.
the side bending or side tilting, and also the anterior, posterior kind of tilting forward and back of the pelvis.
That's right.
If you can imagine I'm this way, I'm tilting forward and tucking.
Kind of give
under.
them a side view there.
Yeah.
It's a really simple device. It's got one sensor back here, kind of sitting right above his tailbone, and it's going to give us those three measurements, which is what we're looking at in this video.
Exactly right.
So it's not quite as all-encompassing as gears, but it's the same sort of 3D movement that we can just see exactly what we're doing.
And it's
really good
amazing
advice.
for training. You can set up for training. It's amazing for that. You can use it at your house.
Biofeed that,
and get
training, yeah.
It is a great device for learning some of these body movements.
But we're going to show you how to do that old school,
Yeah.
analog, and then we're going to show you the data that it produces. All right, so we're going to have Sean set up. So I've got this noodle, the end of this noodle pointing about mid-thigh for him, and that's kind of what we want to go to. Depending on your height, size, and all that, we want what do you call that? When you go underneath a thing in Hawaii.
Oh, that's
What's
oh,
that
come
called?
on.
Put it in the comments if you can think about it before we do.
I mean, unbelievable. Okay, keep going.
No,
I'll
it's
think
gonna
of it in a
mess me
second.
up. Okay, so that's going to be that bar. Can't believe I can't think of it.
Stupid.
So set up to it.
All right.
So Sean's going to take his alignment stick and he's just got it going through his belt loops, and he's going to get it underneath that noodle there at the tip of it.
Okay.
That's going to ensure that he has not only the proper tilt, and he can rotate as much as he wants to, as long as that thing's clearing that noodle.
Yeah, so if I did it wrong, you would see how it
Yep.
actually, and I see people turning like this all the time. Yep. The club gets too far inside, the hips get flat, they overturn, I miss it high. So you want to miss it low. Your knees have to change to do that. And there's some corresponding like upper body tilting, but for all intents and purposes, if you can get the knees changing in this end high and this end low. Now the kiss of death here would just to lower it without having it swing underneath.
Yeah, we're not just trying to just throw ourselves forward to lower
Yeah,
it.
because I can lower it and lower my whole left side, but you want to lower it as it turns and swings under it.
And still look very golf-like.
And that would put you in a really good spot.
Yeah. And if you do this correctly, you're going to be surprised at how much easier the upper body stuff becomes.
Yeah.
Like you're building the upper body movements on top of a really good lower body
body.
move. So that's number one. All right, you guys may have to try this first with arms across your chest and doing that correctly.
So, you know, just a little more detail with this as you turn back.
Yep.
You're going to feel this high, this low. The other thing you have to make sure of is that you don't overly arch your back as you do this, right?
Let's do that kind of from an angle here so the camera can see it. Just tilt towards me a little more.
Like
Other
this?
way, other way.
Like this.
Keep going, keep going.
Okay.
Right there. Now show them that arch again.
So if I turn back and arch my back and kind of lose this engagement in my middle of my
He gets
body.
this kind of, or just lets his stomach just kind of like
Yes.
relax his stomach. He's going to lose all this tilt.
So I get an arch in my lower back, I'm able to overturn and this flattens out. So you've got to control the pelvis in this direction as well, this anterior posterior. You just need to make sure you kind of keep a flat or just kind of neutral lower back, which would be safe anyway.
Right, you don't want to add this arch to your back while doing this.
Yeah, and you don't want to severely like tuck your rear end under, not that you would do that, but you see some odd looking maneuvers in the backswing and people just get things in their head, right?
That's right, that's right.
So that gives you the correct motion for going on the backswing with the drill.
That's right. And then, you know, you're not going to hit balls in this, but you want to do it without a club first and just really focusing on making the hip move. And if you can record yourself or get in front of a mirror, then you want to make sure that you're not just doing this to make that happen. You want it to be right. And then lastly, you're going to add the arms and the club so you can kind of tie in all this movement together. And you should be able to clear this. We don't want it this too low down by the knees, and we don't want it up by the waist. Kind of between the knee and the waist, you clear that, your hip tilts are going to be right on the money. Rotate as much as you want inside of that window.
Yeah.
And then you have every chance to get open on the downswing.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did enjoy it, go ahead and give it a like. Also, if you have any questions about today's video or you have an idea of a video that you want us to shoot, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. We read every single comment. We also respond to the comments. So again, leave us a comment if you have any questions or there's anything you'd like to see. Now, if you haven't already, click the subscribe button. We have videos coming out every single week and we don't want you to miss one. So by clicking subscribe, that ensures you're notified right away when a new video comes out. And hey, if you want to add instant distance to your driving, we all do, everybody wants more distance, go ahead and click the link in the pinned comment below. You're going to see a link. Click on it, it's going to take you to a page. You're going to enter your name and email address. We're going to send you an email where you're going to get access to instant distance, which is a video training that we put out. We know it's going to help you. We know we're going to see you farther down the fairway.